Hey, good morning, Epiphany. Glad to see you. It's the first day of the great Triduum of Easter. That is the three acts that comprise one service beginning tonight, 7:30 with Maundy, Thursday, tomorrow night, the Good Friday service, which is hard. It's a day of fasting tomorrow. I invite you to step into it. And then the great vigil on Saturday night at 8 o'clock. So I encourage you to participate to the fullness of your ability. All the broadcasts will be on the front page of our website. You click through and it'll take you to YouTube, and there you'll see what we're doing by way of worship and praise of God. It is our God, the resurrection of Jesus Christ, second person of the Trinity, God incarnate in our presence, gone and then back to prove to us how much God really loves us. It's a sweet thing. Yesterday, we talked about the worshiping God in spirit and truth. The Gospel of John, chapter 4, we ended, I think, around verse 24. And Jesus had said, God is spirit. And those who worship, I'm going to preach about worship on Easter morning at 8:45. Worship him in spirit and in truth. Worship is... it's core to the constitution of our eternal nature. It's like water is to the body, so worship is to the soul. It allows us to be our fullest selves, because worship is the thing that identifies the reality of the presence of God in the world and how we are united and tied to that through praise and adoration and thanksgiving. So our souls are fed by the function of worship. It's core to who we are, and we do it in spirit. Let's read on here with John chapter 4, verse 25. The Samaritan woman said to Jesus, I know the Messiah is coming, who is called the Christ. When he comes, he will proclaim all things to us. And Jesus says, right here, if you have any doubt about it, I am he, the one who is speaking to you. Wow. Big reveal? I don't know. It seems pretty apparent if we can, even at this point in the Gospel of John. I am is the name of God. I am he. We find that out in the conversation that Moses has with God by the burning bush. I am. This is I am, Jesus. Just then, it says, his disciples came. Remember, they'd been away getting food in Synchar? They were astonished that he was speaking with a woman. But no one said, what do you want? Or, why are you speaking with her? Then the woman left her water jar and went back to the city. Now that's an act of faith. That she's done. She's done having to come out there and collect water. It will never be the same again. She has the water of eternal life bubbling up in her. And she goes back to the city. And she says here, in verse 28, she says to the people. Now these are the people that forced her to go and collect water at noon, right? This is clearly the community that has ostracized her for whatever reason. It might have something to do with her 5 husbands. It might have to do with the fact she's living with somebody now who isn't her husband. I don't know what it has to do with, but it has to do with something, right? She is an outsider. And she goes right down into the middle of the city. She knocks on the doors and she rings the bell and she calls out in whatever way one calls out to their neighbors at that time in Synchar. And she says, come and see the man who told me everything I have ever done. He cannot be the Messiah, can he? And then, and I love this so much, and they left the city and were on their way. So they heard this woman, this outsider, and she spoke with an authority. And that's what happens when you speak with the authority of the Spirit, right? When you admit that God knows everything about you, and that transparency just bubbles out. Now, let's face it. Those folks in the community knew everything about this woman. That's how communities worked back then. Not like now when you can hide away in your little sequestered place, right? And live whatever secret life in your mind or in reality you want to live. But not back then. You were born there, you died there, your parents had lived there, your grandparents had lived there, your children will live there. You are there and you are known. And it seems that while she was known to the community, she wasn't known to herself. It's often what happens. Usually we're much better known by people than we think we are. We're much more transparent than we think we are. But she comes out and says all of a sudden she's been changed. They see a new woman. They see somebody who's come in and admitted the reality of her life. And they're like, wow, if this woman, Phontini, as we know her to be, if this woman finally owns her stuff, then whoever she ran into at that well is somebody I want to meet. And if she calls him the Messiah, well, who knows? So they hoof it out to Jacob's well, where they can meet Jesus. So we'll leave it there, right? The revelation of the insight that Phontini shares, that she has in herself and that inspires the community around her. We're all evangelists, right? We all have this wonderful opportunity to share with the world who we are honestly and authentically, right? Right down to our very souls. That is what Jesus brings to us. That is the meaning of the resurrection. So, my prayers are with you. My heart is with you as you enter into these sacred 3 days. You are a blessing. You are absolutely in my prayers, and I love you. Peace upon your soul.